And maybe we give a minute or two before we jump in.
Welcome from University School Milwaukee. Good evening. I'm Patrick Tevlin. I'm your Chief Advancement Officer. And yes, this is not a virtual background. This is the actual University School iconic tower in the middle of campus here. And purposely dim the lights a little bit so you can see this wonderful iconic view of University School Milwaukee and welcome you back home to our wonderful campus this evening. I promise you a great evening of great advice, great thoughts. And please share your thoughts in the question and answer area of your Zoom platform. We're happy to take all questions and all thoughts and share them back with you, the answers, as much as we can. So again, welcome to our final gift planning workshop. This is your school and your legacy. And I always like to add in there too, this is your philanthropic adventure, we hope, with us. And not just with University School Milwaukee too, but with the other nonprofits you'd like to serve and volunteer for and give to. We want to make sure that our donors have this gift and benefit from our school to you and this education really to support what you're doing philanthropically across the country and the world. And I'll say this, I think tonight on tonight's phone call, we have folks, I know this, we have folks from the West Coast to the East Coast. It seems like the West Coast is winning in this case. And thank you so much for the West Coast folks being there. And certainly folks from the third and Great Coast here in Milwaukee that are joining us tonight too as well. So thanks for being here. You know, at USM this year, it's a year of celebrating our culture of generosity and virtually. Who knew we could be on Zoom so much these days? And I promise not to talk too long because I know I get the Zoom fatigue and we understand that. So, but this will be an engaging night. And so on behalf of my colleagues in the advancement office here at University School, we're grateful that you're here. And as a way of thanking you again, we're inviting you to these virtual events so that we can share some more education about what we're doing here in this wonderful world of culture of generosity. So without further ado, I want to introduce our great practitioner, our great teacher and coach on this, Christy Boysen. Please help me welcome Christy. She's our gift planner extraordinaire. She brings a great business sense to us and great engaging personality, which you'll see. And there's a great element about Christy where she is definitely donor-centered. She takes a great approach with all of our people that we're working with, and John Stevens will attest to that. He's been a user as well, and a happy one too. Many of you remember John Stevens and JS, as he goes by affectionately. And she's worked with dozens of families and helped a number of nonprofits establish multi-million-dollar charitable state gifts and realizing great impact on their missions. So a couple more house cleaning thoughts. Again, we're grateful that you're here. I want to say that again on behalf of our advancement team and certainly our new head of school, Steve Hancock, which I hope you all get the opportunity of meeting soon as we move out from getting the vaccine here at University School. And but again, please feel free to ask questions. We'll get you those answers, if not tonight, later down the road. And again, every one of our seminars, our webinars are being recorded. So we'll be sending out probably in April, the entire series, and then and some messaging about how you can get to those webinars on video as well too. So, and I just want to say one more thank you here too. I want to thank Maria Stone, our Director of Development. Many of you know her too as well. She's been helping pull this event together, this series of events together for us, these virtual events. And certainly Vanessa Nurbun, our Director of Alumni Relations as well, engaging with all of you. So without further ado, Christy Boysen, she's going to be talking about implementing your plan. Thank you, Christy. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Patrick. I always appreciate having you introduce me. I never know what you're going to say, but also I love that backdrop. So great work tonight. A good way to end. Let me just tell you a little bit about who I am, who Gift Planning Services is. That's the organization that I work with, and I get this just phenomenal opportunity to partner with a university school and a number of other nonprofits in helping donors think about legacy, think about their generosity, and think about what it looks like to intentionally plan for the future. So, what do we do, or who are we? We have a deep heart for charitable giving, and weaving that into our framework, incorporating a variety of tools that speak to the passions and values of the families that we serve. Our goal is to provide education that allows families, individuals, organizations make a greater impact than they ever thought possible. We oftentimes uncover fresh or new ways for individuals to be generous, both with their loved ones, but also with their favorite nonprofits. And then we sit in this really sweet spot of being a third party. We don't sell anything, we don't draft anything. We really sit in kind of the middle with a family and holistically look at the snapshot of all the different influences, from family to values to organizations they love. And then we coordinate with all of their professional advisors. And so I'm glad you're here. I'm excited to talk with you and do kind of a deep dive on, gosh, how do I implement a plan, a legacy plan, an intentional plan with my family? So, big picture, like Patrick mentioned, this is the last of a 3-part series. So we started off back in November, it feels like ages ago, in talking with families about anticipating legacy. So helping individuals just understand and evaluate what it means to leave an estate and what it means to intentionally plan for and leave a legacy. In our second session, we talked about preparing the next generation. When we leave, there's a whole generation or 2 or 3 that are going to benefit from what we leave behind. And so what does it look like to today begin kind of training up and encouraging and growing those future givers? In tonight, we get to talk about implementing those plans. So tying together legal documents, talking about different roles, in digging a little bit deeper into a variety of trusts, taking maybe what might feel complex and simplifying it so you might kind of see yourself in some of these spaces. So first, we'll talk high level estate planning, then we'll dive into trusts, and then we will talk about some practical application. So let's start with your estate plan. And it looks like my computer is freaking out here just a minute. So hold on. Let's see if we can pause that. No, that did not work. Oh, it did. Hey, there we go. Oh, that it does not like that slide. So we'll fly through it really quick here. So what is an estate plan? So an estate plan is designed ultimately to efficiently transfer assets from one individual to another, often with the goal of being tax efficient and maximizing financial inheritance. It tends to include a will, which is a legal document that clarifies what you want to happen to your property at the time of death. There are healthcare directives like a living will, a power of attorney for healthcare. There often is a power of attorney, like a durable power of attorney. So legal, financial, kind of business decisions happen there. Then some estate plans include a revocable living trust, and that covers a lot of the basics that a will does. But the person in charge of settling those affairs would be called the successor trustee. It helps kind of skip probate and privatize that plan. And then testamentary charitable vehicles. That's something that I spend a lot of time talking with families through. Bequests can be great options, foundations, donor advised funds, charitable trusts as well. So we'll talk a bit about that down the road here. So what then is a legacy plan? Is there a difference between an estate plan and a legacy plan? And I would argue that there is. A legacy plan is a lot more than legal documents. It's really a thoughtful engagement of the life that you've lived and the legacy that you want to leave behind. It then is an opportunity to review the plan that you have in place, to see the full picture, to see what's working and maybe what doesn't quite do what you want it to. It is a great holistic space to communicate values to your family and ultimately transfers assets. And kind of at the core, it, as the same as an estate plan, pulls together documents and plans, but it also incorporates wishes and values and other key information. So what's the benefits of creating a holistic legacy plan? Peace of mind is one of the first things that comes to mind, and definitely something I hear from a lot of the families that I work with. Um, Providing and protecting, so the ability to leave assets to your heirs in ways that help them and also protects those assets. It oftentimes reduces costs and mitigates future disagreements. When I work with families, and what I encourage families, maybe I'm not even working with, is spend time talking about things today. Have those hard conversations, explain why you're doing what you're doing to those that you love or to the charities that you want to remember, because that can help minimize disagreements. It helps people know what your wishes are and what you were thinking, and oftentimes calms the situation, even in the midst of the grief. Another benefit to creating a plan is identifying and naming trusted individuals. I often hear families say that, hey, I created a plan 10, 15, 20 years ago, but they don't talk to those people anymore that they named as the guardian or as the trustee. And so often creating a plan or revisiting a plan can entail really thinking through and coming up with some fresh individuals and those that will really align with who you are. And then oftentimes planning includes the ability to avoid paying unnecessary taxes. There are legal and ethical ways to reduce and even eliminate income and estate taxes that might be due when you transfer assets. And so that's a huge part of the work that we do, and of course of thinking through strategically your future legacy. And then there's often this softer side of legacy planning. It's an opportunity to honor your resources. So what do you want to pass on and why? I encourage families, I encourage you, and over the series, I've certainly talked about this plenty. Write letters to your loved ones. Take note of important things. Share the stories around the heirlooms or the pictures or the videos that exist. I have a family that I've worked with at USM that in this process decided that it would be really meaningful to take pictures of really key things in the home and put together a booklet with stories included, and then reviewed that during a family holiday. Didn't require them to do that as a part of their legacy planning, but it kind of came out of their desire to ensure that their loved ones knew what it was that that chair meant to their family, or that box in the garage that no one would maybe know belonged to the great great grandfather of their dad. So a lot of meaningful things can come out of intentionally pausing, intentionally capturing these different things for our loved ones as a part of this process. So some key words to know. What is intestate? Well, what happens, or it is what happens when you die without a will. Sometimes it's a state where the decedent lives and determines his heirs. Sometimes it's a state that has physical property where some of the items were located at the time of death. Different states are going to have different rules and regulations, but if you don't have a will, you don't have a plan in place, that state is going to determine what happens to everything that you have, that you own, and sometimes what happens to those heirs of yours as well if you're younger. What is an heir? An heir is anyone who is entitled to inherit from an estate. So when someone leaves a will, his or her heirs might be the beneficiaries under its terms. Likewise, all beneficiaries are not necessarily heirs. So my husband and I don't have children. So when we have worked on these plans, we of course are remembering our loved ones, but we're also including and remembering friends that have been a really significant part of our lives. So heirs can mean kind of a couple different things depending upon what your plan looks like. And what is intestate succession? So it's the order in which heirs inherit from a decedent's estate when he or she has no estate plan. So again, depending on the state that you are in, things are going to go differently. Everything might go to your spouse, or some things might go to your spouse and children. So there is a plan, but it may not be your plan or your wishes. So our encouragement in this process, in watching these different webinars, is to encourage you to revisit what you have. And if you don't have something, to really sit down and spend some time thinking about that. So roles. When we're working on designing an estate with a family, we are often talking about a whole host of different people that might step in at different parts of their estate plan, or perhaps something that might take place when they're incapacitated or unable to make decisions but still living. So let me just quickly walk through some key roles here. Personal representative, or executor might be a familiar word for you, is the person that you probably want to pick someone that's responsible, good with money, might follow the rules, because they're going to help ensure that your plan, your will, goes according to your wishes. And so those are some key helpful things to think about when naming that person. So a trustee, now there might be two different types of trustees, maybe more, in your plan. The trustee is going to do something quite similar to that personal representative. They really come into place if there is some sort of trust formed as well. So again, some pretty similar language here. It's good to have someone that's responsible, good with money, follows the rules. But a trustee for a minor's trust or a spendthrift trust might look a little bit different. And we're going to talk about what those types of trusts are in a minute. But a minor's trust is going to protect your children, who are often under the age of 18, but could also be a bit older and into adulthood. It's often wise to put a trustee in place for this position that's going to act like you. They're going to help make decisions for the funds that are there, that you might make as the parent. And so responsible is important. We often find that it can be nice to have a friendly trustee that's named. So someone that's going to say, you know, you may not need that brand new Corvette at age 16. I'm not sure that's wise, but let's get you a really reliable Honda. Or whatever that vehicle is. Perhaps it's they receive an inheritance at 25, and this individual is also been given permission to help with a mortgage down payment. Well, they might be willing to give a significant amount for that $1 million house, or they might recommend that that child perhaps not purchase that type of a house at that stage. So a friendly trustee can be really helpful in that space. A guardian. It's really important that the guardian, again, aligns with who you are and what your values are. This is a space that I think can be hard for families to think about for many reasons, right? They're no longer going to be a part of their child's life in the same way. And sometimes it's hard to think of someone who's going to do what you might want them to do in that position. So we often recommend that you bring someone in that has the same values, maybe a similar household environment. If you have a faith, have that same faith, perhaps a bit younger. I see some families really wrestle with that, where they might want to name their parents, but their parents are, in their 70s or 80s, and maybe that's not a great fit. And of course, you want this person to be able to raise children. A durable power of attorney is the person that's going to, while you are living, step in and help with some of the businessy parts of your life. It's helpful if that person is responsible, good with money, again, follows the rules, and they're not going to abuse those privileges. The power of attorney for healthcare, on the other hand, is a little different. They're the person that's going to make some healthcare decisions for you and on your behalf. It's really important that this person understands and is going to follow your wishes. They're strong. These are hard positions to serve in. And so they're able to make maybe those hard, tough choices. Being able to communicate with loved ones, provide maybe an understanding of some medical knowledge, so that they can provide wise advice. Let's talk about the living will or the healthcare directives. So this is a person that's going to help, excuse me, it's not a person, it's a set of rules that you are going to set up to help guide perhaps that power of attorney for healthcare. That can be a hard set of directives to put together, but a really helpful vehicle for your loved ones. So like I mentioned, there are some really key roles that you'll have to name or think about, or perhaps rethink in your own personal plan. And I wanted to just show you some key things to think about in naming those people. So legacy planning and gift planning, how do those work together? Well, legacy planning, and because I get the privilege of working with a lot of generous individuals, you're here likely because you're a generous supporter of USM. And so legacy planning incorporates or can incorporate charitable giving. And it oftentimes explores opportunities that people think are beyond their capabilities. So we talk about bequests, but we also talk about charitable trusts. We talk about donor advised funds, foundations, things that might stretch the assets that you have so that you can actually give more and be more generous, both to your loved ones, but also to the charities you love. So this next section here is to dig into trusts. So something that I'd encourage you to do during this session is to take notes of any of these that ring a bell or seem like something that might fit or align with your family or your needs, your wishes. And something that I think is also really critical to know is that, one trust is not going to be a one size fits all. So what you need might be very different than your neighbor or another student in class, their family. And so recognize that as I talk, some are going to apply today, some may not apply for 15 years. But again, hopefully some of this will sink in. So first, we're going to spend time talking about the difference between a revocable or revocable living trust and an irrevocable living trust. So who are these trusts for? They are typically for someone who has property in several states, perhaps, someone who desires privacy and wants to avoid probate. This is a really important tool to set up if that's the case. And perhaps someone who wants more control and flexibility over their asset distribution. So what's the key difference between a revocable and an irrevocable trust? Well, a revocable trust is changeable. So you can create it today and modify it, update it, add things to it, change the rules, and all of that is okay. An irrevocable trust is not revocable or it's unchangeable. And so the trustees or the recipients can't change how it's handled, how things are invested, and sometimes even how those assets are titled, depending upon the terms of the trust. And there is not an ability to change that trust or what goes into it. It's a permanent vehicle. And so it's critical to understand how these might be applied. So one of the families that I've worked with, we'll call them Mark and Julie. They, in this process, worked on creating a revocable living trust because it made sense for their family. It gave them space to establish some kind of unique systems for their kids, but it also gave them the flexibility of making changes as they aged. What you typically have to do when you're setting up this type of trust is retitle all the assets into that revocable trust. And then, of course, it's always helpful to talk with the kids about what you're planning to do. So Mark also received an inheritance from his parents. It was the land that they had that also had a small lake on it. And that was given to him in an irrevocable trust. He couldn't change any of the provisions when it was in the trust. His parents transferred it into this type of trust while they were living because there was a lot of growth potential. And so they wanted to minimize some of the potential future tax that they had coming. And they wanted it to be designed so that Mark and his siblings could not make changes until 20 years after these parents, his parents, passed away. And the reason behind that was to create space for Mark and Julie and their kids and some of the other grandchildren to experience the joy of this type of living on lots of land on a lake. But they also wanted to give some permission and freedom for them to kind of get out of that, to sell it or to break it apart within the family down the road. And so there were some provisions written into that. So a period of time, and then of course there were modifications allowed. And what's really critical to know here in that irrevocable trust is Mark's parents had set the terms of the trust before they funded it. So again, that's a part of that irrevocable component. They have to set all the rules up, then they fund it, and then everything kind of plays out as planned. Great tool, great option for some families. Most families that I work with tend to live out of that revocable living trust a bit more, but there is purpose for both. So next trust that I want to talk about is called the Charitable Remainder Unit Trust or Annuity Trust. So who is this type of trust for? So this type of trust is for anyone with retirement assets. They can transfer those retirement assets into a charitable trust at death via beneficiary designation or provisions written into that revocable trust or will. That type of a way of using these trusts is funded at death, but you can actually fund a charitable remainder trust during life as well. When might someone do this? Perhaps someone that has highly appreciated assets that they're willing to part with and want to avoid the gain, but still receive some income. Or someone who perhaps has real estate that's been depreciated out and wants to sell it, but not recognize the gain or recapture those capital gains. So again, funded during life. So for the lifetime trusts, to kind of take that a little bit further, like I said, it's funded with appreciated assets during life. The benefits of this type of trust is that it bypasses gain. So the individual, the donor that places these assets into a charitable trust, they don't realize gain, don't have to pay taxes on that. They also receive a charitable deduction during life. So there's some additional benefit and value to the families that do this. A charitable trust provides a stream of income, and I'll show an example here in just a minute. And after a set number of years, it creates a bonus gift to charity. So it's a very powerful tool of paying out, providing support perhaps for themselves or for others, and then creating this huge gift that didn't exist in the plan before. Testamentary, this is something that you set up as a part of your estate plan. So it's not funded until you pass away. Like I mentioned, it's typically funded with retirement assets because those assets, even if your estate is not taxable, those assets, because they are placed into these funds, the IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, et cetera, without tax, when the person takes them out during retirement, they are charged tax for income. And when the heirs inherit it down the road, there's also income tax. And depending on how large those funds and assets are, that tax can be pretty significant. And so this type of a vehicle allows for distributions to take place to the heirs. And then again, that bonus gift to charity. The trust also receives, or the estate also receives, a charitable deduction. So that's a big bonus. And so let me just share an example of how this works. So we have John and Jane Doe. I created this plan at a basic 1 million. So if you're here and you're saying, gosh, my estate's smaller, or wow, my estate's a lot larger, it's a lot easier to do math on a $1 million plan. So John and Jane Doe have $1 million. They have about 200 and can't see my picture here. They have $350,000, in qualified assets. And so they want to minimize some of those taxes to their heirs. So they like charity. They want to be generous as a part of their plan. And so in this plan, they place those retirement assets into a charitable trust. When it pays out at 5%, Because of the growth of the funds that are in these trusts, living around the 6 to 7% on average, if we look historically at these, 5% is peeling off the interest. In over 20 years, their heirs would receive the base funding amount and then some because of the growth. And at the end of those 20 years, there is a huge gift to charity that takes place. So, this is a really powerful tool for those that have retirement assets. It also creates a really neat stream of income to the heirs. I've seen families write letters that go out with each annual payment so that the kids are being reminded of how much mom and dad love them or their hopes and dreams and wishes for them. So it can be a really neat way of kind of continuing to love on heirs throughout the following 20 years. So a neat and powerful tool. What it also does in an estate like this, if they incorporate a baseline bequest, which is an outright gift from the estate or perhaps from retirement assets to charity, they're able to gift about $450,000 to charity. And still, of that $1 million, gift just below that. So a great way to maximize giving, a great way to still care for kids, but also to support those charities that you love. So a neat tool. Think about that. If you're intrigued by it, we can talk more later. So another set of trusts to consider would be the minor's trust, or sometimes a minor's education trust, can be a little more specific, or a spendthrift trust. And they are very similar, but can have different purposes. So who might this be for? It's for parents or grandchildren with children under 18 or 21, or perhaps heirs that maybe don't manage money as well, or you just want to break up their inheritance over a set number of years or distributions. So a minor's trust, like I said, protects assets under the age of 18 or 21. Spendthrift is the same thing. What I love to help families think about are there trigger points or reasons why you might want your heirs to access these funds a little bit earlier? So I've had plenty of families incorporate kind of a health, education, and general well-being, which is pretty common. Most attorneys include that. But I've also seen families include things like college graduation. We want our son or daughter to receive a gift on that when that happens, or marriage or some type of union. I see families say, hey, we would want our son or daughter to receive a wedding gift from mom and dad. Gifts to children, grandchildren, matching down payments on first homes or support in that space. I have some families who know that their kids will likely want to start a business, and so they've included some additional parameters to assist or support in that space. It can also give guidance to guardians on how they can utilize the trust to support their heirs. So it's a really powerful tool, both for those that are under 18 and being supported by perhaps a different family than yours, but it's also a great tool for spreading out inheritance down the road. So I've got this great little illustration here to show you. So this is a really common one that I see with families that have minor children, is they say, you know, at the age of 18, I'm just not sure that I want my child to receive everything that they're going to get from us. So let's put some parameters in there, give some good reasons for accessing the funds early, for education, for health, for marriage, for whatever it might be. And then at 25, let's pull out 1/3 of their trust and let's give that to them as a gift, as their inheritance. And then I actually see some families incorporate charitable giving and generosity into these distributions. So they recommend that there be a 10%, 5%, 50% I've seen gifts to charity made. And often it's put into a donor advised fund, which allows the heirs to gift on behalf of mom and dad to the charities that they love. And so it's a really powerful teaching tool. In this example, we've got that first 1/3 coming out at 25, another 1/3, or really it's half of what's remaining, coming out at age 30, and then another one at 35. And that's when the estate and the trust would fully pay out. Like I said, a powerful way to break down an inheritance. We do see with our 20 plus years of experience that it's not uncommon for an inheritance to be spent right away. And so if there is a way to minimize that, or to create different opportunities for the money to be spent at different ages with maturity and cognitive growth, some of that can be a really powerful motivator for setting something like this up. So another type of trust that I want to talk with you about is called the special needs trust. Now, this is not for everyone, and it may not be for you, but it's possible you know someone where this might apply. So who is it for? A special needs trust is for an heir who is receiving some sort of state services. If they have too many assets, it is not uncommon for them to get kicked off of those services. So a special needs trust is designed as a legal arrangement, and it's a fiduciary relationship that allows a physically or mentally disabled or chronically ill person to receive income without reducing their eligibility for public assistance or disability benefits through Social Security, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's a pretty powerful and important type of trust for you to keep in mind for, like I said, perhaps you or for someone else. I'm just thinking here if there's a couple additional things. These assets are designed for the benefit of the child or the heir, but they are not considered their assets. And that's a part of what really sets this apart is the child doesn't own this, the trust does. And so that's where the protection really kicks in. Something that I've seen families do is they create a final gifting clause in there. So when that heir passes away, I've seen families gift a portion or in full a really substantial gift to charity. Oftentimes, those with some type of special needs are receiving some supports from nonprofits that are doing powerful work. And so it's a way I've seen those organizations be supported in some significant ways. So again, a really neat way to be generous, but also take care of loved ones. A spousal trust. This is not, again, for everyone, but something that might apply or work for you. So who is this for? It's a trust for a surviving spouse to preserve exemption and or anyone seeking to preserve the deceased spouse's share for the next generation. So there are two types that I tend to see most commonly. One is called the Q-tip trust. What that actually means is qualified terminable interest property trust. That is why we call it the Q-tip trust. It's a mouthful. And this is a type of trust that allows someone to provide income for their surviving spouse and bequeath the property and assets to a different set of beneficiaries. It's not uncommon for that different set of beneficiaries to be children. So I've seen this as something for maybe a second marriage. This is common for any marriage that takes place with someone perhaps from America and then another country, where it really provides for them their entire lives, but it doesn't get muddied by some international conflicts. So powerful tool in that space. Another really important one for the spousal trust is a credit shelter trust, which offers flexibility to the executor in maximizing estate tax savings. So powerful tool for large estates. In this case, it divides the estate into two separate trusts. Sometimes you hear the word A-B trust. This is kind of the same thing. And it's designed to preserve the exemption and bypass future estate taxes. The assets are designed to provide for the surviving spouse's use, their enjoyment, for income, but they're ultimately going to be distributed according to the original deceased spouse's instruction. I've seen for a lot of families that perhaps have land that's been in the family for a long time, or home or homes. This can be a really great great option for making sure that that piece of property, that house stays in the family, but still provides support, love, and finances for the loved one that is still living, that spouse that's still living. So great, powerful tool, something to consider if there might be any concern about future marriages and or really to protect something for bloodline. And the last trust that I want to talk about today, and I'll cover briefly, it might feel complex, is called the ILIT, or the Irrevocable Life Insurance Trust. I'm working with a family right now who will likely incorporate this into their plan. So this trust is for someone with a taxable estate over the state and federal thresholds. It's someone with liquidity needs at death, but they don't want the death benefit to be a part of the taxable estate. So again, kind of pulling some funds out of the estate. And it's also someone who might want, it's for someone who might want to make a current gift, resulting in a much larger gift later. I've seen families use this to give maybe a piece of property or a business away, but they want their heirs to still receive that equal value. And ILIT can be really great for that. So the purpose is to transfer proceeds from a life insurance policy outside of the taxable estate of the donors. The primary use is to provide liquidity to pay those estate taxes. With the exemptions being higher, it's not as common. In 2026, we are likely to see that federal estate tax exemption drop back to the $5 million mark, with, of course, it's slotted for growth. But for families that are dealing with more substantial assets, this can be a great way to give to loved ones. So what I see is families often use the current gifts. The gift allotment right now is $15,000 per person. And they use those gifts to fund the life insurance premium. So the heirs don't have to pay for it, even though it's in the name of this trust and paying out to the heirs. The heirs or the recipients have crummy provisions. That's an individual, not an indicator of what that's about. And they have to sign a letter every year saying that they want their gift to stay in the trust to pay for the premiums. And that's how families, again, can transfer that wealth. And when that life insurance then pays out after the death of the insured, distributions to the heirs and recipients are considered income and estate tax-free. So again, great way to transfer assets, worth looking into if you're concerned about that, or you want to do something substantial now, but gift something in the future for your heirs out of the estate. So some things to know, and I touched on this at the beginning, is that trusts are not a one size fits all, and who I choose to name as power of attorney is not going to be necessarily the same thing as my husband. And the thought process that we put into those decisions is not going to be the same as your best friends or family members. This is a very individualized decision-making process. Something else to keep in mind is that your needs for various trusts will likely come and go. So you might not need a minor's trust today, but because you've seen some of the ways in which your son or daughter are living their lives in their 40s, you might want to put a spendthrift trust into place to support them. We never know when those special needs trusts are going to need to be triggered and applied. So again, may not apply today, it might in 20 years. We just don't know. So keep in mind that, estate plans, legacy plans should be revisited. Current documents can have instructions to set them up at death. So it doesn't have to be funded today. I think that's something that can be a misnomer. And not all trusts are created equal. So just some things to keep in mind as you're thinking about your own plan and as you are perhaps thinking about other people that might need a plan. So some considerations, some questions that I would recommend you spend a little time with is, who do you want to impact with your legacy? Is it all to go to your kids? Okay, great. Then let's make sure that you do that in a really great tax efficient way. If it's not all to go to your kids, then let's make sure that you're creating something that allows you to be generous in the ways that you want. What assets are in your estate? I think sometimes They change, well, always they change, let's be honest. But sometimes we forget what we have. Oftentimes I have families sit down with me and they say, gosh, I didn't realize how big my estate was. Wow, I can do a lot with this, huh? It's a lot of fun. It's always an eye-opening moment, and a really great space then to talk about generosity and how to love family well. Another question to consider is, what professionals do you currently work with? Do you have the right people sitting around the table helping and supporting you in the plan that you're creating? And then something I really, really advocate for with families is pull your documents together. I can't tell you how many times I have encountered people who have said, it took forever to find all the different names of the accounts mom and dad had when we were closing their estate, or we didn't know that there was this account and it showed up 10 years later. Or the family that has a parent that's purchased and supported businesses around the globe, but they don't know where or how to access it. And so pull things together. It's a gift you can give your loved ones. So that will, revocable living trust, powers of attorney, pull together retirement plans, life insurance plans, beneficiary designations, make sure they're going to the right place. That is something that people tend to catch in this process. Passwords, login information, account information, that is tricky and it's a little slippery to get your head around. But again, that can make things a lot easier for your loved ones. And then take that snapshot of your assets. What do you have and where? And are you doing with it everything that you actually want to do with it? So some next steps then for you. So we have kind of done a deep dive into trusts and wills and different roles. So what I would encourage you to do is assess where you are, incorporate the applicable trusts that align with you, align with your family into your personal legacy plan. Review your plan every 3 to 5 years or anytime there's a major life event. And those major life events can be really positive and they can be negative, but those still are good trigger points for checking in. I've worked with some families who have said, you know what, in this process, I've learned that I want to know what's happening. I want to understand where things are going. And so every time that I file taxes, I'm going to set aside a couple hours and just pull together documents, double check that my estate plan is doing what I want it to. And it can become a really good kind of trigger point for moving things forward or checking in. Make sure that your beneficiaries are directed to the appropriate recipient. It's amazing how many don't have quite the right people updated, or they do for the primary, but the secondary is not accurate. Those designations are the binding designation. So no matter what your will says, no matter what your trust says, the beneficiary designations trump all. And so make sure that they're doing and going where you want them to. Review plans and expectations with those playing key roles. So often we don't want to talk about death. Often we don't want to burden our loved ones with some of the responsibilities they might have or that you've named them as. That being said, most people that have been named want to know what your wishes are. They want to know what you hope to happen health-wise, who you want that rocking chair to go to, and what you want to have done with their things. And so if you can communicate that, if you can sit them down and say, hey, we've named you and here's why, and share both your care for them, your decision-making, but also your hopes and dreams, that will make a difference. And then last thing I'll leave you with here on this slide is setting this up yourself does give you an opportunity to encourage others to do this as well. Across the board in America, doesn't matter how old you are, your demographics, where you live, only 30 to 40% of Americans have a plan in place. So if you're thinking about this, even if you sit through this and you think, yep, good, I am golden, I've got this figured out, it is very, very likely that other members of your family, perhaps your kids, maybe your neighbors, your best friends, don't have a plan. And it is a lot of work for loved ones to grieve and figure out what to do with everything. And so if you can do that, give them peace of mind, Encourage your loved ones, your friends to do the same thing for their people. I think you're going to see some really neat conversations happening, even if it's hard. So what's our process, right? So we've talked about this partnership that Patrick and Maria and others at USM have with me. So our process is to partner with USM, with families at USM, and help them think about their plan. Help them consider options, do a deep dive, holistically assess, does this match up with my values? And then help you make that happen. Show you options, walk through all of that. So if you're curious, want to learn more, connect with Patrick, connect with Maria, connect with Vanessa, connect with anyone at USM, and they will help get you to me so that we can at least have an initial conversation. And if you're not sure you want to go through a whole planning process, but you want to ask a couple questions, totally fine too. I do that as well. So that is it from me, Patrick. Do you have anything to add?
Christy, great job. I just want to reiterate the thought too that this is for you. This is for you, our donors and our alumni, parents of alumni, even current parents of the school. And I've learned something every time we do this seminar, Christy. And I think one of the quick questions I wanted to share was that there was what do you advise folks on when they have like a vacation home and they've got multiple they got families of children and grandkids and
Sure.
And those places can be pretty emotionally set in the family culture and what do you and they left it to the kids, but then have you ever had one of those situations where you have to work on that?
Definitely. So if you're on the let me set things up well side of things, and you're kind of planning for the future yourselves, what I would encourage you to do first is just talk with your loved ones, make sure that they want it. Most of the time when it comes to a vacation home, a family, piece of property, most kids want that, or at least they want the option to keep it. So what I would recommend is some type of unique trust for that piece of property, for that house. And you could do that, scenario like I explained with Mark and his family, where it was an irrevocable trust with some parameters on it. I often see there being some good wisdom and maybe also peeling off a percentage of life insurance or the estate to help cover some of the costs like upkeep and taxes. That can be a really great space. I tend to encourage families, if they're going to do that, to put in kind of a get out of jail card. So if, I never recommend that anyone who's received an inheritance make big choices in the first few years. So it tends to be wise to put it at least 5 years out, just to give space for everything to settle and to kind of make wise choices. But I would definitely do a trust of some sort. You can set up a dynasty trust, and that would help actually keep it in the family line forever, and protect it. I'll just share a personal story. I have an uncle who has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres in Wisconsin and deep passion for the environment and helped create some really neat laws in that space. But what he did with his property is he put it into a trust and said, if my kids want to, sell this at some point, it goes to the state of Wisconsin and is protected land. And so that's a way that he set it up. So there is that get out of jail card, but he set some of the parameters. So that would be on that side of things. Does that give some help?
And I've heard this before, but just not to go too long here, but a life reserve estate, that has to do, if I remember this correctly, when you do have either a living spouse or a parent that's still in the vacation home, what have you, or the domicile, the family home, they could stay there, but the estate, it goes into, so I'm gonna stop there. You have to explain that to me again.
Yeah. So there are, The beautiful thing about trusts is that there are all sorts of different names for them, and they clearly do different things. But the beautiful thing at large is that you can create pretty much any rule that you want. And so the trust you just mentioned is designed to kind of gift that property, that home, to the kids, to grandkids, to whomever. But there's a clause or a provision in there that allows that family member, maybe the original funder of it, to live there, and to, usually there's built in some, you have to pay the taxes, you have to do X, Y, and Z as kind of a part of this, but the property's been gifted. I've seen that done as a gift to charity as well. So you can actually gift your house if it's right next to USM, and you can have some provisions in there that let you to continue living there until you pass away or that day comes. And then that organization receives that land.
And I'll be over there to paint every chance I get to keep it up, and
there you go.
painting it and helping our good family donors out. Milwaukee. Well, Christy, you've been great, and I do want to emphasize again that this is a benefit to our donors to give them the opportunity to hear from you, to receive a little education on it. I mean, we've got smart alumni and families, and they're great people, and it's always good to be reminded of where we might or may not be. And I know you've seen a lot of that in your time and your experience working with donors, but there's always something that people need to think a little bit further about, explore a little bit deeper and find out, wow, there's actually more I can do here for the nonprofits, and not just USM, but for all the nonprofits that we like to support through Milwaukee and through the world. So again, thanks to all of you who have been out to these seminars, to these webinars, and joining us in this conversation, this dialogue, and we'll be sending out these videos to you in April to share again the series with you, so you can view them at any time you'd like with at your leisure, or with a family member, or what have you. And Christy's here. She's with us at University School and supporting us on this effort, and she's a great partner with us. And she's already helped a lot of great people out here. And I'll say it again, she's helped JS and Carolyn, and they're so grateful. I'm not saying anything they wouldn't say tonight if they were here. And it's great to know that you can support us every turn of this. So every turn of the way. So thank you so much, Christy. Thanks for being here, and thanks for giving us some great seminars and some great thoughts to think about.
Absolutely, Patrick. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for attending tonight, and reach out if you need us.
Thank you. Go Wildcats.